Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new camera comparison video between the brand new Realme 9 Pro Plus and the Xiaomi 11i HyperCharge. So what you're seeing right now is the 1080p 30 fps video being shot from both the phones. The Xiaomi can shoot up to 60 fps videos from the front camera, while the Realme is only limited to 30 fps videos. So what do you think about the quality? How are the mics working? What do you think about the audio quality? And also the stabilization and the dynamic range as well. I'll quickly show you. So this is how the cameras do when you shoot against the light. So what do you think about the overall output of this selfie video from both the smartphones? Let me know in the comments. And without wasting any further time, let's go on with the rest of the video. The latest Realme 9 Pro Plus features a 50 megapixel IMX766 main camera with optical image stabilization. This is coupled with an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera and a 2 megapixel macro lens. At the front is a 16 megapixel snapper for selfies. On the other side, the Xiaomi 11i HyperCharge features a 108 megapixel Samsung HM2 main camera. This phone is also coupled with an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera and a 2 megapixel macro lens. For selfies, there's again a 16 megapixel lens situated in a center aligned hole punch. Starting off with this first photo taken from the primary camera of both smartphones, and the result looks pretty decent. However, the Realme did manage to take a slightly brighter image than the Xiaomi, and the colors as well, while ever so slightly look punchier on the 9 Pro Plus. So these are pixel bin shots, 12 megapixel images basically. So zoomed out, pretty great photos, not too shabby. However, upon zooming in, I feel both could have done better in preserving the details. I mean, that's the point of pixel binning, right? Another daytime shot taken from the primary lens, and this time around the differentiation is much clearer. So looking at the sky and how the greens are captured, I was pretty much convinced that Realme's camera algorithm is tuned more towards capturing saturated tones, something you'll see in the coming photos as well. As for the Xiaomi, well, the photo is decent enough and can be fixed with some light photo editing, but straight out of the camera, the warmer color temperature is apparent in comparison to the Realme's output. Coming to the next one, so I took this shot to see the HDR capabilities of both smartphones, and while the earlier photos were somewhat of a close call, in this round the 11i simply takes it from the 9 Pro Plus. Again, both phones are not perfect, but Xiaomi did churn out the better image. Of course, once again emphasizing some light photo editing could be used here, but looking beyond that, the dynamic range, while not perfect, is better on the Xiaomi. Upon looking closely, the Xiaomi phone also did better in dealing with the shadows. Simply look at the shop, or you can also take a look at the tree. In terms of white balance, the Realme is on the cooler side while the Xiaomi is on the warmer side, but as I said, Xiaomi's image is better here, and all the nitty-gritties could be fixed with some light photo editing. In this other photo as well, shot directly against the sun, once again I liked the dynamic range in Xiaomi's photo. As for the Realme's photo, because of the high contrast, the darker areas in the image suffered. Now coming to the ultra wide angle camera of both smartphones, and I loved the part that I didn't get to see any corner distortion in the images, so that was good. In terms of color profile also, the ultra wide cameras are able to somewhat match the color profile of the main camera, although Realme does tend to have more contrast in photos, resulting in, as I said, darker areas are not properly exposed. One more thing to see here is that since these are smaller sensors, and while we are dealing with mid-range smartphones here, don't expect much in terms of details in the photos, something that's very apparent even without zooming in on the photos. Coming to clicking human subjects during daytime, and I found out that my skin tone in the image taken from the Xiaomi looked a bit pale. Even the color of my shirt looked slightly washed out, but in the case of Realme, skin tone was handled well. Overall, the colors were a bit on the saturated side, but I liked the overall output. I mean, the image looked good, and that's what matters. Going indoors, and the shot that you see here looks okay. Of course, Xiaomi does need tuning when it comes to dealing with the highlights, but apart from that, shots taken from the 11i HyperCharge did look over sharpened to me in many different situations, something that I'm not sure how will it appeal to the general consensus. For instance, in this photo, I just couldn't ignore the grains on the subject's face. Apart from this, portrait mode shots also had superb edge detection in both the phone's output. I mean, colors were again a tad bit oversaturated in Realme's output, but Xiaomi was also not far behind. Now, my only main problem here was of course the dynamic range. Also, in the last photo, as I was talking about over sharpening, so in not so great lighting you get noise in the output from the Xiaomi phone. However, for the photo shot in broad daylight like this one, the grains aren't there, but I still can't ignore the over sharpening of the skin texture. On the other hand, the Realme in this case definitely did a better job. These phones also come with a 2 megapixel macro sensor, but the quality is nothing to write home about. While Realme phones are never actually known for their macro lenses, the Xiaomi also, as in this case, feels like a downgrade with its 2 megapixel camera. I mean, the 5 megapixel tele macro sensor on the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max from last year, or the recently released Xiaomi 11i Pro, those macro lenses are amazing. I can't say the same for the 11i HyperCharge. Low light photos only turned out satisfactory from both smartphones. As the case with this photo, this one actually looked pretty decent on the phone's screen when I initially clicked it. However, upon seeing it on the big screen is when I realized that in terms of details, both phones did seem to have messed up. Although I will give the edge to the Realme 9 Pro Plus here for the better color preservation. Apart from this, photos taken in low light but with decent artificial light source around did turn out pretty good for phones under 30,000 rupees. Of course, we have seen better results from other phones in this price bracket, but these two here also fared decently. So the Realme does seem to churn out brighter images most of the times, but that comes at the cost of poor dynamic range. And while Xiaomi's output again might not look the most brightest, the camera does manage to deal with the highlights better in the background. Now, after turning on night mode, a lot of things changed. First up, the shots look sharper and detailed, which is good. Colors also look fine on both, although with night mode on this time around, the Realme did seem to deal better with dynamic range, while Xiaomi on the other hand did have its struggles. Moving on, in terms of clicking selfies, both phones produced almost similar looking results, and honestly I loved the results from both the cameras. Of course, the skin tone wasn't the most natural here, but as I said, selfies looked good to me. Detailed and sharp, just the way I like it. Even in terms of portrait mode selfies, edge detection was on point and things looked absolutely fantastic. In fact, I did prefer my skin tone in the Realme's output, and I'm saying this in case I have to make a choice between the two, but otherwise can't go wrong with either of them. Although HDR selfies were not that great, for instance in this photo, while the flare looks cool in both phones' output, I only wished if the sun behind me could have been captured better. Night selfies were also fine considering you have a decent enough light source around you. In my case, while the Realme did produce the overall brighter output, the Xiaomi did better in producing a more detailed output. But honestly, selfie performance in the night was definitely not as great as it was in the day or even in good artificial light. Finally, in terms of video recording, both phones can record up to 4K 30fps videos from the rear camera, and in terms of output, the Realme does have the advantage of OIS, but still I wasn't as satisfied with the stabilization here in the 4K video. The colors were also boosted on the Realme while Xiaomi's output exhibited more neutral colors. 1080p 60fps videos again turned out to be better stabilized on the Realme, but once again, Xiaomi's biggest disadvantage in terms of video recording has to be the lack of stabilization. And finally, as for the 1080p 30fps video, while the Xiaomi does get the electronic image stabilization this time around, I did find too many noticeable judders in the final recording, and overall, I don't know man, the video recording from both phones was kind of a mixed bag. While the colors looked better on the Xiaomi, Realme was better when it came to the stabilization. Which one would you pick? Overall, when it comes to choosing which one's better than the other, well, that's a difficult one, guys. I would say if you're someone who likes saturated tones in their photos and videos, they will definitely like what the Realme 9 Pro Plus has to offer. Even in terms of video recording, while the 4K videos could be better stabilized, if you can live with boosted colors in your output, you'll be just fine with the 1080p output as well. As for Xiaomi, in terms of still photos, Xiaomi's straight out of the camera results might not look the most attractive, but the colors and the white balance in photos was closer to the source. And as I keep on saying, with a little photo editing, you can always tweak the results for better. However, for videos, Xiaomi definitely needs to up its game, because for any phone at this price point, I feel basic electronic stabilization should be standard across all video recording formats. Finally, selfie camera on both smartphones was good, and as I earlier said as well, you can't go wrong with either of them. So after seeing all the photo and video samples, what are your thoughts, guys? Share everything with me in the comments below, and as always, for all the latest in tech, stay tuned to Mr. Phone. I'll catch you all in the very next one. Thank you for watching.